Opening in stages between 1860 and 1863, the Colne Valley and Halstead Railway meandered through rural Essex between Wakes Colne Station in the southeast and Haverhill in the northwest. Despite its proximity to the mighty Great Eastern Railway, the CVHR maintained its independence as a line until the grouping of the railways in 1923. Never an especially prosperous line, it saw a protracted decline until its closure to passengers in 1961 and goods in 1965. Without further ado then, let us explore what remains and what there is to rediscover of this lost line. Our journey begins at Wakes Colne Station on the Gainsborough branch line to Sudbury. As well as being an operational station, it is also home to the East Anglian Railway Museum, which occupies the former London-bound platform and the adjacent yard. Closed on the day of filming, this channel has visited before and it comes recommended. As we look towards Chappel Viaduct in the distance, the present merges with the past, and we find the rail bus that will be our train along the Colne Valley and Halstead Railway on its northwesterly journey. The line branched off to the left of the picture, hereabouts. But out in the fields, the course of the railway can be traced by the trees in the middle distance and by the slight hump in the road under which trains passed. I hope you're enjoying this film so far. Should the CVHR have closed? Will it ever reopen? Let me know your thoughts, memories and experiences in the comments below. And after only a couple of miles, we call at our first station, White Colne. As you may have glanced in the footage, the station platform was on one side of the crossing, with the booking office and other principal buildings on the other. And whilst the site of the former is now occupied by housing, the latter endures, and it is used as a village hall with in-keeping allusions to the history of this place. With White Colne Village Hall in the background, we see the onward trackbed has not fared so well. It is a tangled mass of vegetation, and with heavy rain falling on saturated ground prior to filming, the situation here and further up the line is best described as boggy. Here we find abutments of the railway on Colne Park Road. We press onwards, but not for long, because under 1.5 miles from White Colne, we arrive at Earl's Colne. Compared to White Colne, the station building here is quite substantial as we take in the view of the courtyard. The rails lay on the other side of the low building. And whilst these have been uprooted and the land repurposed, the profile of the station building remains broadly unchanged. With tokens exchanged, we depart. Facing back towards Earl's Colne, we find here the site of the level crossing on Elms Hall Road. And now, facing towards Halstead from the same position. The maps say this is a public footpath, but the signs hereabouts clearly make the public's presence unwelcome. So, 1.5 miles later, we find ourselves on the railway's trackbed in the town of Halstead, where now sits a supermarket. But it was not always thus, for this was once the approach into Halstead Station. The excellent archive footage here has been slowed down so that we can better take it in. Operational for 105 years before its closure in 1965, this fine picture provides an excellent panorama of the station from the trackside. And here a crowded platform. The station will be especially busy for railway excursions to the coast. How dignified all look in their dress. Speaking of which, 2 very well-dressed schoolboys man the footplate of locomotive Halstead, which idles in the station. Keep your eye on the building at the extreme right of the picture, because it stands today at the centre of this contemporary scene, where flats now occupy the station site. All things must pass, I suppose. Departing Halstead, few signs of the railway remain, save for these fence posts. They mark out the course of the line, though today this is now an unremarkable strip of untamed growth. Out in the countryside now, and back into the past. Coming into view, the bridge on Headingham Road. All gone now, all gone. We stand upon Alderford Street Bridge, looking back at the trackbed. This is a sorry sight. But the bridge itself seems in fair order. Half a mile later, we reach our next station, Sible and Castle Headingham. Opened in 1861 alongside passengers, the railway here was used to transport bricks from the local works and joinery, among other things. And after closure, the station site was redeveloped for industrial use, before taking its current form. But the story of Sible and Castle Headingham is far from over, and if you bear with me for 1 mile more, you will find that there is a happy sequel to this tale. For now, however, with tokens exchanged, we depart. And here, the railway embankment leading to Station Road, where there was once a bridge. But now, only an ivy-covered abutment remains. Towards the next station now, and the much-anticipated sequel to the Sible and Castle Headingham tale, to the site of a station that did not exist during the years of the CVHR's operations, but sits on its site now. For this is the Colne Valley Railway, an excellent heritage railway running steam and diesel alike. Everywhere you look, the efforts of the volunteers and their attention to detail is to be found. And now, the conclusion to the aforementioned story. For this is Sible and Castle Headingham Station, because when it closed and was due to be demolished as part of the site's redevelopment, volunteers were given the chance to take the station apart brick by brick and resurrect it here on their own site. And when so much of this line has been lost, it is satisfying to see efforts such as this buck the trend. After all, something has to stay. Shall we have a look around? Goodbye, Castle Headingham. Our journey through the Essex countryside resumes, but beyond the limits of this delightful heritage line, built on the railway's course, all that remains of the railway for the next mile is under the plough, and this footage is all we have. So it is we arrive at Yeldham. "62 miles from London Liverpool Street, this photograph presents a station replete with the trappings of any rural station, with signal box, goods shed, booking office and other freight facilities. Today, only the platform remains. For many decades, they resided enmeshed in vegetation until the volunteers of the Colne Valley Railway cleared all this away. Here we look back towards Sible and Castle Headingham as a rail bus bound for Cambridge pulls in to a wet and vacant platform. And now, the situation today. We bid Yeldham farewell, and the line becomes increasingly rural in character. A little over 3 miles from Yeldham comes into view 4 Ash Hill Road Bridge. In fact, beneath the shadow of this bridge was once Whitley Station, which lived only an ephemeral life from May to October 1863, acting as a temporary station before the completion of Birdbrook, the next stop along the line. The bridge is in good order, but the view is troubled by the insidious blight of fly tipping. Onwards now, and less than half a mile later, the railway emerged from a cutting and into Birdbrook Station, about where the warehouse can be seen. In fact, the warehouse in the previous shot is a reclad version of the station's goodshed. Handsome and pristine looking in this photograph, Birdbrook was never especially busy, and even in those days, this location would have been considered fairly remote. All that remains today is the platform and a trackbed knotted by tree and undergrowth. Farewell, Birdbrook, as we must travel through the countryside once more. As we enter Haverhill, our archive footage presents us with a junction. To the left, the original Haverhill station. To the right, its successor. Here is the junction today. Shall we go left first? This was the original station, which was open for passengers between 1863 and 1924, after which time, and until its ultimate closure in 1965, it served goods alone. It is hardly surprising that the site has been redeveloped in the years since it last saw trains, here on the corner of Colne Valley Road. Let us return to the junction and now continue right. And in so doing, we cross the delightfully intact Hamlet Road Viaduct. Here's the situation on top. Beyond, the footpath that follows the railway's route into the second of Haverhill's 2 stations continues. So for the final time, let us return to our archive footage which has accompanied us on our journey, and features here thanks to the Alan Snowdon Archive, a remarkable YouTube channel featuring cinefilm of many lost railways in Great Britain and on the continent. I urge you to subscribe to the channel for more, there's a link in the description below, and you can expect to see more films from my channel featuring the late Mr. Snowdon's footage, for which I am most grateful. Thus, 19 miles from Chappel and Wake's Colne, we arrive at Haverhill. Sometimes referred to as Haverhill North to distinguish it from the original station we visited moments ago. This station was situated on the Stour Valley line between Cambridge and Sudbury. Closed in 1967, Haverhill has been without a railway ever since. Periodically, proposals are floated to reconnect the town to a wider public transport infrastructure, be they busways, light or heavy rail, but nothing yet has materialised. And they will need a new site, for a supermarket now sits where Haverhill Station once stood. Hope springs eternal. I do hope you enjoyed this film. Do please like, leave a comment, share widely, and click your notification bell. If you feel you could support my efforts further, you might consider buying me a coffee. Details in the description below. And join me next time so we can continue rediscovering lost railways.